from commission protection to understanding the agreement itself. In the previous section, we focused on how agents lose commissions by failing to properly execute agreements or by allowing compensation terms to become inconsistent. Now we take the next step. To protect your commission, you must fully understand the agreement you are using. The buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement is no longer just a form. It is the foundation of how you get paid in today's market. The big picture. What this agreement really does. At its core, the buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement establishes three critical things: who you represent, how you are compensated, and the scope of your authority. This agreement creates an exclusive relationship, meaning the buyer is committing to work with you, and you are committing to represent them professionally through the transaction. It is important to understand that this is not just paperwork. This is your employment agreement with the buyer. Notice to buyer, why this comes first. Right at the top, the form makes it clear: a signed agreement is required before showing property. This reflects the modern real estate environment where representation and compensation must be defined before any work begins. This protects both the agent and the buyer by eliminating confusion about roles and expectations. Parties to the agreement. Who is involved? The agreement clearly identifies the buyer, the brokerage, and the agent. This section is more important than it appears. It confirms that the brokerage is the actual party to the agreement, with the agent acting on behalf of the brokerage. This ties directly back to agency law. You are not acting independently, you are acting through your broker. The agreement section, exclusive representation explained. This is where the relationship is formally created. The buyer gives the broker the exclusive and irrevocable right to represent them during the term of the agreement. This means the buyer cannot work with multiple agents without potential liability. It also reinforces something critical we discussed earlier. Agency must be clearly defined to avoid confusion and disputes. The term, start and end dates, matter. The agreement must include a clear start date and expiration date. This is not just a technical requirement. Without a defined term, the agreement may not be enforceable. From a practical standpoint, this section answers a simple question. When does your right to compensation begin and end? Employment duties. What the agent agrees to do. This section outlines your role, including helping locate property, negotiating on behalf of the buyer, assisting throughout the transaction. This ties directly back to fiduciary duties. You are not just opening doors. You are advising, negotiating, and protecting your client. Agency relationship, connecting back to prior sections. This section references the agency disclosure form, reinforcing what we previously discussed. It confirms how you are representing the buyer, whether as a buyer's agent or otherwise, and ensures that the relationship is consistent across all documents. This is where everything starts to connect. Agency plus agreement plus compensation. A complete compliant transaction. Property viewings, a critical but overlooked section. This section requires the buyer to work exclusively with you and be accompanied on their first visit to properties. Why does this matter? Because if the agent is not involved in the first showing, compensation may be at risk. This is one of the most common ways agents unintentionally lose control of a transaction. Broker compensation, the most important section in today's market. This is where the agreement becomes critical in the modern real estate environment. The form clearly states, compensation is fully negotiable and is not set by law or any association. The agreement then defines exactly how the broker will be paid: a percentage, a flat fee, or another agreed structure. This ties directly to what we discussed earlier. Compensation must be clearly defined at the beginning, not assumed later. How compensation works with the seller. The agreement explains how compensation may come from the seller, the listing broker, or the buyer. Here is where modern practice becomes critical. Any compensation offered by the seller must align with the buyer-broker agreement. If there is a difference, it must be addressed, negotiated, and disclosed. This connects directly back to the previous section. If these numbers do not match, your commission is at risk. Failure to complete, protecting the agent's work. This section explains that if the buyer prevents the transaction from closing through a breach, the broker may still be entitled to compensation. This protects the work you have already performed and reinforces that your time and effort have value. Compensation. After expiration, protection beyond the agreement. Even after the agreement expires, there is protection built in. If the buyer purchases a property that you introduced during the term, you may still be entitled to compensation within a defined period. This prevents buyers from avoiding payment by waiting out the agreement. Listings section, a major 2026 shift in practice. This section reflects a key change in today's market. The broker agrees to show properties that meet the buyer's criteria regardless of compensation, unless instructed otherwise in writing. This reinforces two important concepts. The agent's duty is to the client, not the compensation. Compensation must be addressed separately and transparently, equal housing and professional standards. This section confirms compliance with fair housing laws and reinforces that agents must operate without discrimination. This is not just a legal requirement, it is a professional standard that applies to every transaction. Release of broker, knowing your limits. This section makes it clear that the broker is not providing legal advice, tax advice, financial advice. Instead, the agent may recommend third-party professionals. This is a key risk management tool. Stay in your lane and refer out when necessary. Dispute resolution, how conflicts are handled. The agreement outlines a process for resolving disputes through mediation arbitration. This helps avoid costly litigation and provides a structured path for resolving disagreements. Execution, the step that ties everything together. At the end of the agreement, both the buyer and the agent must sign. This ties directly back to the previous section. Without both signatures and delivery, the agreement may not be enforceable. This is where many agents fail, not in the negotiation, not in the transaction, but in the execution. Bringing it all together. This form is not just something you fill out. It is the roadmap for your entire relationship with the buyer. It defines your role, your duties, your compensation, your protection. When used correctly, it creates clarity, professionalism, and security. When used incorrectly or incompletely, it creates confusion, disputes, and lost commissions. This section ties everything together from the previous chapter. Define the relationship early. Execute the agreement properly. Align compensation throughout the transaction. That is how professional agents operate in today's market. Online discussion. Question: why is the buyer-broker agreement required before showing homes? Answer: to clearly establish agency, define compensation, and avoid misunderstandings before any services are provided. Question: what is the biggest risk if compensation is not clearly defined in the agreement? Answer: the agent may face disputes or lose their commission entirely. Question: why must the buyer-broker agreement align with the seller compensation addendum? Answer: to ensure consistency, transparency, and enforceability of the agreed compensation.